There's currently a delegation from the World Bank in the country looking at issues around the funding of Eskom and Transnet. The delegation is suggesting they want to focus on those two state-owned entities because of the impact the electricity shortage and infrastructure problems have on our economy. At the same time, there's been confirmation that Cabinet Minister Ayanda Dlodlo will be resigning from Cabinet. She's been appointed as an Executive Director of the World Bank. As I understand it, one of several directors from Africa. She'll be moving to the bank's headquarters in Washington, D.C. Carol Paton is a writer-at-large at News24. She joins us now. Carol, good afternoon to you. Does it make sense for the World Bank to focus on the loans it gives to Eskom and Transnet? Are those the two places where it makes the most sense for the World Bank to spend some money?
Yeah, I think it does. I think it's the right thing. I mean, I think that there's a kind of consensus amongst government, business, labour, everybody really, that the most important things to fix in South Africa are the electricity problem and for business in particular, the logistics problem, the fact that you can't get your products to the port or from the port. So those two areas, you know, the World Bank is saying those two areas are going to make a difference. We want to help you with those. So they're assisting both with research. In the case of Eskom and research, and also they're also discussing a loan. And in the case of Transnet, they're doing some research, and that may lead to a loan further down the line.
What kind of research are we looking at here? I mean, we all know how big the electricity problem is. We all know how big a problem it's been for. Are there any sort of solutions that they're looking at? Maybe some sort of different approach?
Yeah, I think there are solutions driven. So in the case of Transnet, it is a study to look at, well, what can you do? How can you get more private investment into the ports? If Transnet itself or government itself doesn't have the money to invest in, how do we best attract private investment in? And we did see the start of that last week with Transnet, announcing it's going to auction off some rail slots. So it's along those lines, and they're looking at the ports and rail. And then in the case of Eskom, it's a case of, well, you know, what is actually the problem with these coal-fired plants? What is there anything that could be done to improve their performance in the short term? Because obviously, yes, a priority to bring in new generation capacity, but in the meantime, we've got a capacity gap.
I mean, one of the things that's fascinating, if I remember my history correctly, didn't the World Bank help to finance parts of Medupi? I mean, the money didn't seem to be used particularly well.
Yeah, so the Medupi loan is actually, it has got a bit of a sad story attached. But the World Bank does seem to be quite happy with the way it's worked out in the end. So, South Africa they've satisfied the conditions. I think the condition in the case of Medupi, it wasn't an enormous loan, but it was, the condition was that, the plant had to have this flue gas desulfurization, which we know hasn't actually been fitted yet. So that's where the kind of controversy comes in, because Medupi still has to fit that. And it's not sort of within the current budget that it does that. But it was on condition, and that happened. And then the other thing the World Bank is funding for Eskom is a battery storage project.
It's very interesting to see the debates that we're seeing in the energy sector at the moment, but it seems in a way obvious, just to go back to the main point. If we fix electricity and if we fix infrastructure, that should have a big impact on our economy, and that's what the World Bank's really for.
Exactly. So that's exactly their thinking. The World Bank is trying to shed its image of this interfering Western power, which comes along and tells you how to run your economy. So they're much more reserved these days. And so in the case of Eskom, for instance, they're going to be funding help fund this process towards sort of turning this Komati power station into a factory where you manufacture these renewable microgrids. And this is an Eskom-initiated project, not a World Bank-initiated project. And their style is now much more, well, how can we help you? Not do what we tell you to do, and then we'll give you some money.
There's some opposition to using World Bank money. I mean, it lends money, as I understand it, on very good terms. I mean, you can't really get cheaper money. But people do worry that we could lose our national financial sovereignty. How worried should we be about that?
Yeah, no, it carries on being an issue. And just for an example, the Treasury also got its first World Bank loan in the sort of, post-democratic era. A smallish loan, I think it was $750 million. But that is a no strings attached loan, and it comes at an interest rate of less than 2%. So if you follow sort of what's going on in the bond markets, you'll know that at the moment government is borrowing money at almost 10%. So if you can get money at 2%, and there are no strings attached, it's a no-brainer. So I think it is important to look at exactly the conditions and so on attached to each loan. Of course, they want to provide advice and suggest the way that things should be done. But I think that ideological concern that these were that the World Bank and the IMF were these organizations which were set up to kind of, ruin the third world, ruin and control the third world, is something that needs to be put aside. And in fact, an interesting point made by the finance minister recently was that, South Africa is also borrowing money from the New Development Bank, which is the so-called BRICS Bank, and the terms and conditions of the BRICS Bank and the BRICS Bank and the World Bank, the terms and conditions are pretty much exactly the same.
One wonders if the copy and paste function works. There's then Ayanda Dlodlo becoming an executive director of the World Bank. I mean, is that a prestigious job? She's giving up a seat in cabinet. I mean, I would have thought that a seat in cabinet is quite a big thing.
Yeah, I can't say I completely think I have the full story on that. It's, I think it's not a big hitting job. It's not like, a kind of job where you enter the global financial kind of institutions and then, you next thing you're really, really important. It's not so much like that. It's very much a backroom job. It is a director, and her job there will be to represent the interests of African countries. So obviously you've got African countries who are lending money from the bank and are going to and will have certain concerns and needs, and her role would be to actually put forward their concerns and needs to the bank itself. But as I said, I mean, it's not the kind of heavy hitting job that you then go off and become a finance minister. Although that said, there have been cases where African diplomats and ambassadors do go off to the World Bank, fulfill this role, and then do come back and be a finance minister. But I don't think that's really the agenda in this case. So I'm not exactly sure why she would give up a cabinet position for this job unless she really had other reasons, such as really wanting have personal reasons wanting to be in Washington D.C. or for other reasons. I'm not exactly sure what those are or what those would be.